Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's dive into today's story. It all started on a Friday night, the night of Linda's high school reunion. She had been eagerly looking forward to it for weeks. "It'll be so nice to catch up with everyone after all these years," she said, brushing her hair in front of the mirror. "Are you sure you don't want me to come along?" I asked, leaning against the doorway. She laughed, a soft, melodic sound that once made me smile. "You don't even know them, Ryan. Besides, it's just for one night. I'll be back before you know it." I nodded. "All right, have fun." She kissed me on the cheek and walked out wearing a sleek red dress that fit her perfectly, accentuating all the right places. Watching her leave, I couldn't help but think how lucky I was. After Linda left, I took care of the kids, making sure they were tucked into bed and comfortable. Once they were settled, I headed downstairs, turned on the TV, and watched a show to pass the time until I felt sleepy enough to call it a night. The next morning, that sense of being lucky had morphed into something much darker. I woke up early, as usual, expecting to see Linda lying beside me. Instead, her side of the bed remained untouched. The pillows were exactly as I'd left them. My first thought was that something terrible had happened to her. I called her phone. No answer. I sent her a text. "Where are you?" Still no response. An hour passed, and panic began to set in. Then, the sound of the front door opening shattered the silence. Linda walked in, her hair slightly messy. "Where the hell have you been?" I demanded, my voice sharp with both worry and anger. "Relax," she said, kicking off her heels. "I stayed at Jessica's hotel room. We went to a club after the reunion and lost track of time. Jessica was her best friend from high school, someone I barely knew." "Are you serious?" I asked, my tone tight. "You couldn't call?" "I was up half the night, worried something might have happened to you." "Oh, Ryan, stop being so dramatic," she snapped. "It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You didn't come home, didn't answer your phone, and I'm the one being dramatic?" She sighed and rolled her eyes. "Look, I had a few drinks and didn't want to drive home. Can we not make this into an issue?" Her dismissive tone left me speechless. I wanted to press her further, but I stopped. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was overreacting. Over the next few days, Linda became glued to her phone. She laughed at messages and quickly locked the screen whenever I entered the room, as though she were hiding something. But it wasn't just the secrecy that bothered me. It was the way she had changed. The woman I'd known was always open and honest, but now she was distant, shutting me out. It didn't take a genius to see that something wasn't right. She started going out more frequently, always using the same excuse, catching up with friends from the reunion. But it wasn't just occasional anymore. It became a regular thing. Nights out, dinners, drinks. It felt like I barely saw her. It was as though her social life had taken off, and I was no longer part of it. One evening, as she was heading out the door, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I'd tried to be patient, to give her space, but something inside me snapped. "Again?" I asked, standing in the hallway to block her path. She stopped, not meeting my gaze, fiddling with her purse like she was pretending I wasn't there. "Yes, Ryan," she said. "I'm allowed to have a social life, you know." "Who are you meeting?" I pressed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Jessica and maybe a few others," she replied curtly. "Why do you even care?" "I care because you've been out every night this week, Linda," I said, my frustration bubbling over. "And when you're home, you're glued to your phone. It's like I don't even exist anymore." She stiffened, her back straightening. "That's ridiculous. I'm just busy. You're making something out of nothing." "No, it's not nothing," I shot back. "You barely spend time with me or the kids anymore. What's going on?" Her eyes narrowed as she stared at me, her jaw clenched. "Nothing's going on. God, you're so paranoid. Maybe if you trusted me, we wouldn't be having this conversation." The words cut deep. My throat tightened, and I almost choked on my anger. "I do trust you," I said, my voice raw but firm. "But I don't recognize you anymore. You don't seem to care about the kids, and I'm the one left picking up the slack while you're off with your friends." Linda's face turned red with irritation. Her gaze darted toward the door, signaling she was done with the conversation. "Maybe if you were more understanding, you wouldn't be so paranoid," she said, her dismissive tone making my skin crawl. "I'm going out, Ryan. Stop acting like this." She pushed past me, slamming the door so hard it made the walls shake. I stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of her car pulling out of the driveway. My chest felt tight and my heart raced. She had shut me out again, leaving me in the cold silence of a house that no longer felt like home. I couldn't let it go. That night, I decided to find out the truth for myself. The next time Linda told me she was meeting Jessica, I waited until she left. The kids were at my mother's for the weekend, so I had the time and freedom to see what was really going on. My mind was racing, a sick feeling gnawing at me that something wasn't right. I grabbed my jacket, got into my car, and followed her. She drove to a small cafe downtown, the kind of place with dim lighting and old wooden tables. I parked a few spaces away, pretending to scroll through my phone while my heart pounded in my chest. Through the window, I saw her sitting at a table, glancing around as if waiting for someone. A few minutes later, a man walked in. He was tall, with dark hair and a confident smile that seemed uncomfortably familiar. He slid into the chair across from her, and their conversation flowed effortlessly. I watched as Linda leaned toward him, her smile wide and genuine, the kind of smile I hadn't seen in a long time. She laughed at something he said, and my stomach twisted. He said something, then casually reached out to touch her arm. The gesture was too familiar, too personal. My stomach twisted as I fumbled for my phone, trying to steady my trembling hands. Discreetly, I snapped a few pictures of them sitting at the table, ensuring I wasn't obvious. I needed concrete proof, something that would confirm what I was beginning to suspect. The man's hand brushed against Linda's, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she smiled wider and leaned closer to him. The sight hit me like a punch to the gut. They weren't just talking. They were flirting. No, it was more than flirting. I sat there, frozen, struggling to breathe as I watched them finish their drinks. Linda stood, and the man followed. They walked out together, side by side, their conversation continuing as if no one else in the world existed. I snapped a few more pictures, one of them exiting the door and another of them standing outside. Their faces were close, their body language far too intimate. I couldn't hear their words, but it didn't matter. Their actions spoke volumes. Then came the moment I hadn't expected. They kissed. This wasn't a fleeting peck on the lips. It was slow, deliberate, an embrace that screamed familiarity. The man cradled her face gently as Linda closed her eyes and leaned into the kiss. It felt like the ground beneath me gave way. I took another picture, the flash momentarily blinding me under the dim streetlights. But it didn't matter. The evidence was there. After their kiss, they walked toward a nearby hotel. I followed from a safe distance, my heart pounding in my chest. I parked across the street and watched as they entered together, hand in hand. That was the final piece of the puzzle, the confirmation I dreaded. Linda wasn't just catching up with an old friend. She was having an affair. The kiss, the man, the hotel. It all made sense now. I had undeniable proof of what was happening. Sitting in my car and staring at the hotel entrance, a whirlwind of emotions swirled through me. Anger, disbelief, and a deep, aching heartbreak. Part of me wanted to confront her right then and there, to storm into the lobby and demand answers. But I knew I couldn't. When Linda returned home later that night, I was already in the living room, waiting for her. The moment she walked through the door, I hit record on my phone, hiding the screen to make it look like I wasn't doing anything. I placed it on the table, ensuring it would capture everything. I needed a record of this conversation. Something I could use later if it came down to a custody battle. "Hey," she said casually, setting her purse down and glancing at me. "Why are you still up?" I stared at her, my gaze cold and unwavering. "Who is he?" I asked, my tone low but firm. Her head snapped up, eyes wide in surprise. For a fleeting moment she looked genuinely confused, but that expression quickly shifted to annoyance. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her tone defensive. "Don't play dumb, Linda," I said, stepping closer. "I saw you at the cafe. I saw you at the hotel." Her face went pale for a split second, but she quickly recovered, squaring her shoulders. "You were spying on me," she accused, her voice sharp. "Don't turn this around on me," I fired back, my anger boiling over. "You're the one sneaking around, lying to me, cheating on me." She shrugged, her indifference cutting deep. "Yeah, I'm sleeping with another guy. So what? It happened. I didn't ask for your permission and it doesn't mean anything to me. Why are you making such a big deal out of it?" "How can you say it doesn't mean anything?" I shouted, my voice shaking with emotion. "You betrayed me. You've been lying to my face, and now you're acting like it's no big deal?" Her expression remained almost detached. "Ryan, it's not a big deal. I'm just sleeping with him. I don't have feelings for him." "Who is he, Linda?" "What's his name?" I demanded, my voice rising. "His name is Mike," she said flatly. "We reconnected at the reunion. He was my high school boyfriend." "So what? You think you can just pick up where you left off after everything we've been through?" She didn't even flinch. Yeah, I do. I felt a spark, and it happened. But I'm not sorry. You don't get to control me, Ryan. My chest tightened as fury and heartbreak consumed me. Did you even think about the kids, Linda? Did you think about how this would affect them? You've barely spent time with them recently, leaving me to handle everything while you're off playing reunion games with him. Her face showed no remorse, only impatience. What do you want from me, Ryan? She snapped. It happened. Deal with it. I stared at her, feeling the last remnants of my hope crumble. I've been watching you drift away for days, I said, my voice thick with emotion. And you don't seem to care. All you care about is yourself. I'm not the one making this into a bigger deal than it is, she replied coldly. I'm not apologizing for doing what I wanted to do, especially since it didn't mean anything. Her words hit like a sledgehammer. No regret, no sorrow, just cold finality. My family, my marriage, it meant nothing to her. I'm done, I said, the weight of my decision settling in. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Linda didn't move. Her arms stayed crossed, her face expressionless. She just stared at me as if waiting for me to change my mind, but I wasn't going to. I couldn't. Without another word, I went to our bedroom and packed a small bag, just enough for a few days. I didn't look at her as I passed through the living room on my way out. Her cold eyes followed me, but I ignored them. I drove straight to my mother's house, where the kids were staying. Their faces lit up when I walked in, and I forced a smile, trying to hide the turmoil inside me. That night, I told my mother everything, about Linda, Mike, the lies, and the betrayal. She listened, her face a mixture of concern and disbelief. Her support gave me the strength to take the next step. 2 days later, I filed for divorce.